Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with great artist, Bad Day. Yes, they all have them, and it's our job to point them out, to rescue you from the possibility of assuming that just because someone has name recognition, they can do no wrong. Often they do great wrong. And here we're talking about Claudio Abbado and the composer that he recorded quite a bit of, but probably had the least amount of sympathy for. And that is, I hate ending a sentence with a preposition, the composer for whom he had the least amount of sympathy. There we go. Isn't that better? Mozart. Abbado's Mozart was always, well, indifferent. Now, we have to make a distinction here because Claudio Abbado was a nice guy, and he was a very good accompanist. So in accompanying a Mozart piano concerto, or occasionally even the opera recordings, in an opera recording, the Magic Flute, for example, he could do good work. He could, but you always have to remember, an accompanist is just that, an accompanist. You don't go running around thinking that Abbado's performances of Mozart piano concertos with Rudolf Serkin, well, not with Rudolf Serkin particularly, actually, they weren't so hot, were they? But that was because Serkin was very old. But, or his Mozart operas or whatever are fabulous because of him. You think of singing or playing. I mean, an accompanist is second fiddle. And make no mistake about that. Now, of course, there were certain conductors who liked to be first fiddle. So they were terrible accompanists often, like Karajan, for example, who didn't make many concerto recordings. And Abbado didn't really spend a lot of his time making concerto recordings either. But his Mozart was interesting because he stayed away from the classical repertoire. The very end of his career, he tried to do some Mozart and Haydn in quasi-period instrument style with, what was it, the Mahler Chamber Orchestra, the Chamber Orchestra of Europe, or one of those groups. I had a couple of them. And they were perfectly vile. I mean, he hadn't acquired any more ability or sympathy for those composers. He just changed the externality of his interpretive approach. But the result was always boring when it was just him. When he was conducting a symphony, for example, when it was all him, he had nothing to say in the classical repertoire. And that's really very, very interesting. Remember, he did multiple Beethoven cycles, and they all sucked too until the last one. Well, the one we did in Berlin, the last one he did in Berlin with the chamber-sized ensemble, remember that? They released it to tremendous fanfare, and everybody went... And then finally, the videos that were live that they had done at the same cycle, which were better, they quietly got rid of that existing cycle and released the soundtracks to the videos, which were much, much better. So, so that was sort of his breakthrough classical era recording sort of gig. But other than that, he was a romantic repertoire guy. He just was. And we can't make any bones about it. But back in the day, he released this recording with the London Symphony Orchestra of Mozart's 40 and 41, the 40 and the Jupiter, the G minor and the Jupiter. And this is not the original cover. This is the cover that I took out of, hang on a moment, Tito, the Abbado LSO big box. There it is, in which it is currently ensconced. But and of course it's a box. It's got to have everything he did with the LSO, and that was his best period on the whole. There you get the Mendelssohn cycle, which was really, really good, and his Alexander Nevsky and his Ravel, which was beautiful, and stuff like that. His Schubert, which was actually quite good. Even the earlier Schuberts weren't bad, but they weren't not quite. They're on the cusp. They're on the cusp of romanticism. Anyway, that Mozart disc is a scandal. It is the most faceless, uninteresting, snoozitudinal Mozart you have ever heard in your life. I mean, the G minor just has no character. There's no pathos. There's no emotion. It is mechanical to a fault. Absolutely mechanical. I mean, the first movement and the finale, they just lay there. The Jupiter's even worse. Oh my goodness. I mean, yes, there's some attractive stuff in the slow movement, but the first movement doesn't have any, you know, the second subject. I mean, it's an aria, a comic aria tune that Mozart is quoting there. It's quite amusing. It should be done with it should make you want to giggle. And the fugal finale, it's as flat as a pancake. I mean, it's incredible. If he had not been there at all, the London Symphony would probably have done a better job all on their own. And I remember vividly when that recording came out, because I was in college, and I've told this story before about this recording, but just so you know, I doubt you saw that video. Well, maybe when I reviewed this box, but you know, the record masters at the Rotunda in Baltimore, they used to put up signs when new releases came out, whether things were good or not. This is fabulous, this is bad. And on this disc, I remember the LP, it came out, they had a sign that said one thing: stinks. And they were right. It was incredible. And that was the only Mozart symphonies that he did with the London Symphony. He didn't do any other Mozart symphonies, and for good reason. But you got to kind of wonder, I mean, what were they thinking? Absolutely, what were they thinking? I mean, Abbado spent most of his career avoiding music from the classical period, and he was right. Somewhere in his artistic ego, he understood that repertoire was not for him. But, you know, being a major artist and getting lots of attention, and maybe not enough either self-criticism or, you know, constructive criticism from those he trusted, every so often something leaked out. And this was one of them. And it is truly, truly wretched. So there you have it, my friends. Another great artist having another really bad day. So keep on listening and take care.